Welcome to the Flame and Fiber Podcast. My name is Barbara. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Diva S. It's been a while since I podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much to my returning viewers and for all the lovely comments and messages while I was away. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry it's been so long. A lot's been going on and I have a lot to talk about. Welcome to the new subscribers. Thank you so much for subscribing. Dennis has heard all about each and every one of you, and so thank you so much. And I have over 800 subscribers, which is blowing my mind. Anyway, thanks so much. So you can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Diva S. I don't remember if I said that, but I would like you to meet our newest member of our family who is causing some of the disruption in our life, but actually not as much as we expected. Come here. Come here. Say hi. This is Maze. She's our new puppy. I'm sitting on the steps because she is not even allowed in my lap. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Hi, Pup. Say hi. I'll show some pictures so you'll get a better view of her, but she is a noodle. She is half Newfoundland and half poodle, right? And you're cute as a button and soft and sweet. And there's Purl, the best big sister ever. So we got Maze. Oh, let me change this. So that's Maze. I have my coffee now. Good morning. Good morning. I'm sorry it's been so long since I podcast, but oh my gosh. So the last time, oops, let me cover you up. I feel tipped, but oh well, it doesn't matter. Everybody does that. Have you noticed that on podcasts? Oh, I'm tipped. Since I last podcast, Dennis and I were on a Viking River cruise from St. Petersburg to Moscow. We were on the Baltic-Volga waterway, which is comprised of several rivers, lots of locks, canals, and lakes. And it was really a wonderful vacation. It was really interesting, and I have not had a chance to kind of go through my pictures. So I had thought this podcast would be sort of from Russia with love. I tell you all about Russia, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but I haven't organized my pictures at all, so I don't feel quite ready to like go through a travelogue of it, and maybe I'll make a separate video because people may not be that interested, or just if I get a little organized when I'm editing this, I might put pictures at the end. I'm not sure. I don't know how to do a voiceover over my pictures when I edit, so there are a lot of things I don't know how to do as a podcaster that I probably should do, but I haven't done. So anyway, Maze is adorable. We have been taking Purl to an off-leash, there she is, an off-leash dog park that is a big place, and Purl can go in the river, and anyway, she loves it. She gets along with dogs so well, and so we've been doing this. And back at the end of February, beginning of March, we met a noodle puppy. They're also called Newfie Poos, which I think is a stupid name, so I call them noodles. A Newfoundland Poodle mix. And this puppy was so adorable, and Purl played with her so well that I came away telling Dennis, I want a doodle. I wasn't much of a dog person till I met Dennis, and we have had, Purl is our fourth German Shepherd that we have had together. Dennis had a German Shepherd earlier in his life before I met him. And so we've always had German Shepherds. So my father-in-law says, what? This isn't a German Shepherd, when he met her the other day. Yep, nope, I don't know what happened, but what we're really hoping for is a Newfoundland that doesn't drool. She is what they call a designer dog. You know, they have a lot of dogs that they're crossing with poodles for one reason or another. Usually the reason is they want to have the poodle coat, which is people are not as allergic to, and it's not fur that sheds, it's hair that needs to be cut. And that's probably what we've gotten with Maze, but that wasn't our goal. My goal was just to not have the drooling. And Newfoundlands are wonderful, lovely dogs, but they drool a lot. Their mouths are designed, they're a working dog, and their job is sea rescue. So up in the North Atlantic, you know, they jump in the water when the sailor goes overboard and rescues people out of the ocean. So their mouths are designed so that when they're pulling somebody out of the water, the seawater doesn't go down their throat, which of course is terrible for them. So it flows out of their mouth, and that's how their mouths are designed, so that they don't ingest all this seawater, which makes perfect sense, except that means their mouths are designed for whatever liquid is in their mouth to come out. And since our dog has no chance of ever being a sea rescue dog, it just means that she would drool. So that was my goal. But this Newfie Poo Noodle dog that we saw at the park was so adorable, and she was in terrible jeopardy of being dog napped. I mean, I really. And so I said, I want a noodle. So this is a good time for us because we have no plans to go anywhere until October. Every fall now, it's going to be in October, we go and rent a house with Dennis's family in the Outer Banks in North Carolina. And so we kennel our dogs when we do that. And so we want Maze to be 6 months old before we would kennel her. And so she was born March 1st. So she's older than most puppies that we've gotten in the past. She was 12 weeks when we got her. And she's going for her first grooming on Friday. But they do puppy groomings. She's not going to have a full groom where they shave her and that kind of stuff until she's 6 months old. Anyway, she is named after the kick-ass demon on Lucifer, Mazikeen, and they call that character Maze on the show. And she's our favorite character, Dennis and mine, and we were sitting watching it, I don't even know, and thought, Mazikeen, that'd be a great name for a dog. So it's Dennis's turn to name the dog. Obviously, I named Purl. And so she's Maze. And, you know, of course, half the time she's Maisie. And she's turned out to be a lovely dog. She's very calm. She's working on potty training. She does very well. She's pooping outside every time. She hustles herself outside. The first day she was here, Purl taught her how to go up and down the steps at the deck and how to use the dog doors. And she was very, very, she just follows Purl. Whatever Purl does, she does. And she has no fear. She's going up and down the whole staircase now. It's like, oh my gosh. But it's hard for me to, to compare her to Purl, because when we got Purl was 7 weeks old and Maze is 12. So that's a big difference in a puppy. But she's much calmer than Purl was, and she's going to be a lovely dog. And Purl has turned out to be the best big sister, but we knew she would be. She loves other dogs, and she gets along with every dog, and she adjusts her behavior to the dog. She's quiet and respectful to really old dogs, and she's, all over the little puppies who want to romp, and she's really good. And we were right. She is the best big sister, and she's getting along really well. The only real problem, and it's not a real problem, is that Maze eats 3 times a day and Purl only eats once a day. So Maze is sitting there chewing on her drumsticks, and Pearl's like, I don't want to. So I feel bad about that, but it won't be long. It won't be long. Our backyard is completely fenced and extremely puppy-proofed. So we don't worry about her running outside without supervision, believe it or not. And she and Purl play really well, and we're not worried about her with Purl. So it's been a lot calmer around here than I ever expected. So anyway, that's our Maisie. That's our Maisie girl, and Purl is really, really doing well with her. So that's fun. So Russia. So we went to, we were on a Viking river cruise. This is the first time we've ever been on a Viking river cruise. And, you know, the boat was lovely. The people were lovely. This was the first cruise of the season. A couple of places we stopped along the river. We were the first boat that had stopped. And some of them weren't even, you know, some of them had people that weren't open yet or anything. But, so, you know, the first night dinner didn't go great in terms of timing and stuff like that. New crew, and they had a new system where they had a tiny little thing, like almost like an iPad Touch, you know, not an iPad Touch, an iPhone Touch, weren't they called? You know, they were only this big and smaller than a phone. And, you know, they were just getting used to it, and anyway, but they shaped right up. Let me tell you, the next night there were no problems, and it didn't take very long. And of course the people are lovely. We didn't actually interact with very many Russians who weren't part of sort of the tourist industry on this trip. You know, we weren't, you know, we didn't go to anybody's house. Well, that's not true. We did go to one woman's house, and she was lovely. She was a teacher. And anyway, everyone was great. One thing that struck me immediately in St. Petersburg was how clean it was. There was no litter anywhere. So we were in St. Petersburg for 3 days, walking around, driving around on the river. No litter. No litter. You know, Dennis said he saw some cigarette butts, but I didn't even see them. Along the river, you know, we're floating along the river and through canals and all this stuff. No garbage. When we were in one small town, and there was like an eddy right around the marina where the ship was parked, and there were 2 soda bottles sort of in that eddy, you know, stuck. I mean, we have more than that in our creek. I mean, down the road, you know, you get a little eddy and it's full of junk. Anyway, I was really impressed. We were in, our last 3 days were in Moscow, and there was a soda can in the square outside of Red Square, and Dennis picked it up and threw it away. That was it. I was really shocked. Even, you know, and we were driving along highways, we were driving, you know, through neighborhoods. No trash. I was, you know, I was really impressed. Very clean. Very clean. And the other thing that surprised me, and I was delighted to see, was that apparently when the Bolsheviks took over at the beginning of the 20th century, they did not just kind of tear down everything. Apparently they took down a lot of churches, but they were very interested in preserving the history of Russia, the cultural history of Russia. Even though they were atheists, lots and lots of the old important churches were saved. They were turned into museums and things like that, but they were not destroyed. They didn't take all the iconography out of them or any, you know, things like that. So I was really impressed with that. The other thing was St. Petersburg during World War II was obliterated practically. I mean, they were under a 900-day siege. They were, you know, eating sawdust breads, and 1 million people starved while they were under siege from the Nazis. And they were bombarded constantly, so the city was pretty decimated. And anything outside of the city was really decimated, because that's where the Nazis were. The Nazis really came close. And it's all been rebuilt. The Catherine Palace, which is in Pushkin, outside of, you know, sort of almost like a suburb of St. Petersburg. They showed pictures of it after the Nazis left, and, you know, there were a few walls up and a few things. It's been completely reconstructed and renovated and, you know, redone. And it's gorgeous. They've done a great job. And there are lots and lots of beautiful old, you know, the Winter Palace where the Hermitage is. The Hermitage Museum is in the Winter Palace. Amazing. But there are lots and lots of palaces that are still there, and lots of old churches, old important churches were still there and were renovated and in really good condition. And so they spent, you know, they spent a lot of energy to maintain and preserve the history, the historical stuff, which I was really glad to see. I mean, I didn't really know. I mean, I know St. Petersburg was a beautiful city, and it is a beautiful city. But I was surprised by that. You know, it's not like ISIS blowing up the Buddhas and things like that, trying to obliterate the past cultures. They didn't do that. They saved the cultural stuff as, you know, history, as opposed to, you know, even though it was against their ideology. So I was very glad to see that, I have to say. So anyway, I liked Russia a lot, and I'm not sure how, you know, maybe once I get my pictures organized, I'll talk more about Russia. But we had a wonderful time. We were gone almost 2 weeks, about 2 weeks. And during that 2 weeks, I finished my vitamin D sweater. I will put a picture of me here wearing it on the ship. I finished it on the ship. Last time I podcast, I only had one sleeve left to go. And I took it with me, and I finished it on the ship, and I wore it several times on the ship. I've worn it several times since I came home. I love it. I loved knitting it. I was a little bit, you know, I've been having a little mojo problem, and I loved every stitch of this. This is out of Brooks Farm Solo Silk, and it didn't have a colorway. I called it purple, but I don't think that's what was on the tag, and I don't have the tag with me. But I enjoyed knitting the yarn, and I love the sweater, and the short rows were fun, and it looks good on me. It fits me great. I'm so excited. And I might make another one, because I really like it. Not that I need any more summer sweaters, because I seem to have a lot of summer sweaters, although the 3 of the sweaters that I finished last year are just huge on me. I mean, I was making sweaters way too big. Chevy Rell was talking about that on her last project, trying to figure out sizes, and I'm doing much better, because what I've done is I've started doing a size lower than I think I need, and it's working out. Of course, my gauge is never right, so it's going to be a little hard to duplicate, but we shall see. So anyway, I love my vitamin D by Heidi Kiermaier. But I'm going to take it off because it's warm today. So this is my first finished object. With that waterfall front and those short rows, I'm just so tickled with it. And I think it looks good. There's the picture. There's the picture again. I look good. Anyway, I'm really happy with it, and I love the yarn, and I think the yarn worked perfectly. You know, just enough variegation in the yarn to show off the short rows really well. Anyway, I am very, very happy with that. So I took that on my trip because I know, you know, and I took it as one of my sweaters, one of my outfits, and so I finished it up pretty directly. We did find, of course, the knitters on the boat found each other. Hi, Teddy. Hi, Swellen. Hi, Christy. And I actually tried to organize some kind of thing where the people on the boat would say, hey, the knitters are up in the Panorama Lounge, at 10 o'clock today if you want to hang out. But they weren't interested in supporting that, which I was a little disappointed in. But we found each other, and there weren't a lot of places to hang out. So, the first knitter I met was Christy, and she was knitting a really lovely small lace cowl out of Quiviet. She had gotten it as a souvenir when she was in Alaska, and that was the softest stuff. Oh my gosh. And then Teddy's big knitter. She was knitting. I think she would knit every time I saw her. She was knitting. She's in Florida. So, not a lot of wool sweaters for her, but she was lovely. And she was on the hunt for a yarn shop, which did not help me on my, yarn diet, because I'm doing a no-buy yarn no-buy year. Although I did say if I came across some lovely Russian yarn, I would buy it. But in St. Petersburg, Teddy actually asked one of the local guides about yarn shops and yarn, and she said that Russian yarn isn't lovely and that she uses Norwegian and Italian yarn. So I thought, well, if it's not lovely, I'm not, when we were in St. Petersburg, Teddy did go, in Moscow, Teddy did go to a local, what her husband described as like the local Joann's, which had some yarn. And she bought some, and it was a linen nylon mix, which was nice, but I don't need any more linen. And I didn't go. So sorry about that. But I didn't go. I'm on a yarn no-buy year. I'm knitting from my stash. I hope you're joining me and Leslie from the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast. We're having a craft from your stash make-along that, the only rule is the fiber, the yarn, whatever you're using, you owned at the end of 2018, and the project you're doing, you started in 2019. Easy peasy. It's a year-long make along. We're using Stash KAL 2019 on Instagram. If you're an Instagrammer, I should have made it Stash Mail, but I didn't. It's Stash KAL 2019, and so please join us. There are lots of finished objects in my finished object thread. I'm pulling prizes, and Leslie also. We're pulling prizes at the end of every quarter. Prize from the nice prize from the finished objects thread, and pattern from the chatter thread. So come and, even if you're not actually using your stash, but you can go and see what other people are doing and comment on their posts in the chatter thread and maybe win a pattern. But anyway, this all started because Leslie hasn't bought yarn in a year and a half, and I haven't bought yarn since October. I have a big, beautiful stash, and I have to tell you, I'm really enjoying shopping in my stash. I really, really am. So you might enjoy that as well. So that was my vitamin D. So I brought a few things with me on the ship. I had no idea how much knitting I was going to be doing. But I brought a sock that I was in the middle of, and I brought several, I brought another ball of sock yarn that I could make a second sock if I finished that sock, and I brought the makings for, I don't know if this is going to work. The sun is coming up. You can see I'm going to have a sunburn on the top of my head by the time I'm done. I brought the yarn to make a Twinsy shawl. Now this is by Andrea Choate. She's the cat lady, Knit All the Things, C-A-T-T. And this is a very simple one skein shawl. I have a sweater that I really like that I made last year for my birthday from a pattern that Stephanie gave me. Thank you, Stephanie. And Rebecca. The Mean Girls, and I can't remember the name of it now, but it's blue, and every time I put it on, I want to just have a little something, but I'm not looking for something that's going to give me warmth particularly. I'm looking for an accessory, and so a lovely, soft, one skein shawl, I'm on my deck, is just the ticket, see? And so, it's not gonna, and I can always use, oops, hello. I can always use a little something around my neck because air conditioning makes me cold. I'm cold all the time, except right this minute because I'm outside and it's warm. Anyway, this turned out to be the perfect boat knitting for me because it's got that lace detail, so it's got a little something going on, but otherwise it's garter stitch. I mean, there's more of the lace part than the garter part, but I could talk. I could pay attention to my surroundings. I mean, Dennis and I parked ourselves in the panorama bar. We did not have a balcony. We figured the beginning of May it was going to be chilly. Probably weren't going to use a balcony a lot. So we were in the panorama bar, because who doesn't want to be in the bar anyway? And that was where you could see out the front of the ship. And this was perfect for knitting up there with the other knitters and watching the scenery go by. Oh my gosh, the Volga River is so beautiful. It was so serene, and it was lovely to sail down while I knit my Twinsies shawl. So I have two ends because it's a one skein project, and I haven't woven those in, but I will. I did block it, and it was just the perfect thing for knitting on the ship. This is in Narwhal Needleworks yarn. I got this at Vogue Knitting Live in 2017. And it's a lovely MCN 801010. It's their Lyra MCN. And the colorway is Acadia. I made notes today, and I will type up my notes and have project. Something just clicked outside over there that made Purl run. She's been a little, well, we had a terrible thunderstorm last night, and Purl does not do well in thunder. She gets very anxious. It's not as bad as our other dog Melly was, where we had a crater because she would try to crawl inside your body, but she is not a happy camper. I think she's a little jumpy. Anyway, lovely yarn, a beautiful experience. I really enjoyed it, and I'm very happy with it, and I will weave in these two silly ends, I promise. That's my second finished object. I have another one! My third finished object are my Vanilla is the New Black socks. I started these quite a while ago. This yarn is yarn that I made Isabel's sweater with, and I had an extra skein. I used almost every bit of the skein, the leftover skein from the sweater with this. So I have one more whole skein. That may be, I hope you like pink, because that may be the prize for the craft along. I may just give this yarn away because, to tell you the truth, I've done a lot of knitting with this yarn, and I might be ready to not knit with this yarn anymore, although I really do love it, and I'm very interested. I didn't have this one up very well. Very interested, in how this wears. This is the Cory sock, and it is Flying Goat Farms, the Corriedale sock. So I'm very interested to see how this wears. It's Corriedale and nylon. And this is the Vanilla is the New Black. This is a rib heel. I love this heel. I like the way it fits. It's very easy to do 2 at a time on one needle. And so I have been using this for any, I don't think it would work well with self-striping because it does, it's gonna change the stripes. But I don't have a lot of self-striping, and I don't make a lot of self-striping socks. Although I did take self-striping on my trip for my second pair of socks. But I figured I was just going to make a tube and put in an afterthought heel, which I like well enough too. So anyway, Vanilla is the New Black. Oh, by Anna Fletcher. I should have that memorized because I've made this. I've made a lot of these socks. And I actually made the toe according to her pattern too. But it's just a vanilla sock, but the whole point of it is this great heel, which I really like and fits me really well. So, Vanilla's the New Black by Anna Fletcher with Flying Goat Farms. And I forget what this colorway is called. I've said it before, and I don't know where my thing is. Okay. 3 finished objects. I didn't have any finished objects last time. But I was very close. I only had 1 sleeve to go. Okay, but I have works in progress. And guess what I started working on again? Yay! My Exploration Station by Stephen West. I started this back in January. This has been on my list for quite some time. I wasn't even aware of Stephen West when it was the mystery knit along. I've been knitting for 6 years, and so it's taken me a while to get into the, you know, groove or whatever. I've done a few of Stephen West's mystery knit-alongs, or, well, let's put it this way. I have bought the patterns to do some of Stephen West's mystery knit-alongs, maybe 2, and I actually talked about the Speckle and Pop in my last podcast, or 2 podcasts ago, I think, my last podcast. I don't like it. I started the block one, I forget what it was called, and that has tons of I-cord starting all, and I waited until I saw what was going on with that before I even started knitting it, so I didn't knit that. And I was sorry in the end, because the building blocks, I think it's called the building block shawl, because Rebecca of the Mean Girls made it and loved that shawl. It was like her favorite shawl ever. And so then I was a little sorry I hadn't done it, but I didn't do it. So I'm not buying any mystery. I didn't like the doodler. I wasn't tempted to do it at that time, but I didn't like the doodler, and it was one of his mysteries. But I do like the Exploration Station, which you all have seen a million times. Here's my Exploration Station. The last time you saw this, I had just finished, well, actually, I don't know where I was the last time you saw this. I'll be honest with you. I know where I was when I picked it up. When I picked it up, I think the last time you saw it, I had just finished the brioche. This was my first foray into brioche, and it was my entry into the New to You make-along that the girls at Cocktails at the Coop and the Crafty Toads and Chevy Rell were all participating in, because I had never done brioche. So this was my entry. So I finished the brioche by the end of February, because that was that make-along's deadline. So I'm not sure when I did. This part is the slip stitch mosaic knitting. And then now I've been doing just the knitting, and I have a couple more rows here, and then I go to the chevron, and that's the end of the shawl. So this is going to be a nice big shawl. I'm really happy with it. I love my colors, and this is the front of it. You're seeing the front of it. These colors were inspired, and I talked a lot about it back in February or January when I started it. These are 4 colors. This yarn is from Spirit Trail Fiberworks. Senna. The red is Ruby Slippers. The gold is Scrimshaw. The gray is called Vortex, and the blue is called Hannah Lee. And these are colors that were inspired on our trip when we went to Barcelona. They have an amazing museum in Barcelona, the Catalonian National Museum or something like that. It's a big, huge, old museum. And they have taken the frescoes, they have removed the frescoes from medieval chapels and churches all around Spain where they were going to ruin, and they had these amazing frescoes on the wall, and they came up with a process to remove the frescoes. And so this museum is full of small churches, so they rebuilt these churches and chapel walls in this museum and put the frescoes on them. So the museum is all full of Christian iconography. That's what's there. All, ancient Christian art, and maybe some not quite so ancient, but there's a lot of Madonnas in there, some Santa Barbaras, and but the predominant colors in the frescoes are these 4 colors. And so I was very inspired by that. And then we went to the Picasso Museum, and Pablo Picasso had lived in Barcelona for quite some time and worked in Barcelona. And when we went to the Picasso Museum, he has several important pictures using these colors. And I'm sure he was inspired by the same frescoes that I was inspired by. So I thought that was kind of cool. So anyway, when I got home, oops, wrong side. That was in April, and that year I went to, and I think this was 2 years ago. It could have been 3, but I'm pretty sure it was 2. I don't know. I went to Maryland Sheep and Wool with the idea that I was looking for these 4 colors, and I found them at the Spirit Trail Fiberworks booth, and I was really tickled with them. So these are, and let's see, do I have the, oops, I'm getting caught on my lawn furniture. These I think are also MCN. Yep, here they are. Yeah, 75 merino, oh no, 75 merino, 15 cashmere, and 10% bombyx silk. So this is the yarn, four different yarns. And I'm really enjoying knitting this, I have to say. You know, it didn't hurt that I was in the easy, you know, so this is my pick up and do it because it's at an easy place for me, and I can just pick it up, and it's lovely, and I'm very near the end. I think this is going to be hopefully a finished object next time I podcast, and that will be lovely to have next winter. And last but definitely not least, see if I can do this without wiggling too much. Apparently I cannot. Last but not least, I am making the Novelli sweater by Caitlin Hunter. The Novelli tee, and the Crafty Toads are doing a knit along for the Brunswick tee. But when I saw the Brunswick tee, I thought, I don't think that's going to be very flattering on me. I got to put this back on my needle. So I decided not to do the Brunswick tee with them, but it got me thinking about a tee. And I just, you know, after I started this, I switched my clothes finally from my winter clothes to my summer clothes. And I realized I don't really need any more summer sweaters because I was doing a lot in summer sweaters. But I'm doing another summer sweater. So this is a very cute colorwork t-shirt. And so this is the first colorwork sweater that I've ever done. It's only the second colorwork project that I did. 2 years ago I went to Vogue Knitting Live, and I took a class with Susan B. Anderson on colorwork hat. So I made a colorwork hat in January of 2017, and I haven't done any colorwork since then. So this is my second colorwork project and my first colorwork sweater. So that's where we are. But I've had color work on my list of things that I wanted to do for quite some time. So I was very excited to do it. I had some beautiful yarn that I've gone on and on and on about multiple times that I bought at Maryland Sheep and Wool. In fact, I've bought it several times at Maryland Sheep and Wool. Women who do natural dyeing. And I wanted to use their yarn, and I have lots of it, so I thought this will be perfect. It's lovely. It's a bamboo. Most of it is 65% bamboo and 65% merino and 35% bamboo. This is one of them that I did. So I got a very dark red. Thank you, Purl. Purl's saving us from the monsters in the yard. That's her job, and she's very good at it. Okay, Pop. All right. And every time she runs off the deck and barks, May's like heads back in the house. She figures like, if Pearl's afraid, then Pearl, that's enough. No, no. If she keeps this up, I'll be cutting that out. Pearl. So I picked this gorgeous deep red, burgundy red color, and I picked this kind of an apricot-y color, corally apricot color for the color work, and then a very kind of variegated bluey color for the body. And then I was worried about the dark red running and seeping into the kind of apricot-y color and into the blue. And I was worried about the blue seeping, you know, so I decided to set the colors of my yarn. So I picked it out of my brain, and I'm coming to you not even knowing if my brain was correct or not for what it was for. But I have some yarn that I spun that's a very dark red that I wanted to put with a natural color, and so I've been waiting to set that color. So I did that at the same time I did this, and so I took citric acid and a big pot of water and put the yarn in it and brought it up to a simmer and simmered it for like 20 minutes and then let it cool down. And as it's cooling down, and I can see that I've bleached a lot of color out of that red. And it's color and it was interesting because the blue, as soon as I put it in the water, the blue started, you know, from the variegated, from the body color. The water got blue almost immediately. The red, when the water was cool, there was no red in that water. After I was done with it, that water had a lot of color in it. It wasn't exactly red, but it had a lot of color in it. So as it's cooling down, I'm wondering, I wonder if what I did was right, because this is natural dyed yarn. And I do know that what I did was recommended for acid dyed yarns, and it occurred to me that perhaps that wasn't the best idea. So I went and kind of started searching in the internet, which you would have thought I might have done a few minutes before I started to simmer my yarn. And, you know, I didn't find anything that said, you're an idiot, you shouldn't have done that. But I did find an article that says, you know, if you use natural dyes with a citric acid mordant or some other kind of mordants, the colors are going to be completely different, are often going to be very different. So anyway, so my dark, deep, burgundy, gorgeous red color ended up like this. And I don't know if you can see. It's got a red tinge to it, but it's brown. This is a brown yarn. I didn't think I needed to do anything with this color, so I didn't screw that up. My body color, and this is the yarn that I'm going to do the body. And I still like this color, and I think it's going to be beautiful, but I'm pretty sure it was much more vibrant before. But I don't have any befores. The burgundy color, I have a color that's very similar. It wasn't close enough to the one that I was using to use it for the body of the sweater. Thank goodness, because otherwise I would have a brown sweater. But it was very close, and it's a bright burgundy, gorgeous red. If I didn't have gates up and, you know, wasn't watching the dogs, I'd go get it. Completely different color. Completely different color. Now, this is you know, it's an okay brown. It is not gorgeous burgundy like it was. So I do realize that, you know, so I'm not even positive, and before I do anything else, I'm going to look it up. I'm not even positive what I did was correct for acid dyed, but I think it was. And I did my bright pink red fuchsia yarn that I've been waiting to do. I did that also, and it came out right. So I think it wasn't the process that the Knitmore girls use is, you know, you soak it in water with citric acid and then you microwave it for 2 minutes. And that sets it. So I didn't do that. But anyway, some podcasters are really, they know their stuff, and you can learn a lot of things from them. You know, just do what they do. And I'm telling you, you can learn from me too. Do not do that. It will make you sad. Do not I didn't boil it. Do not simmer your natural dyed yarns in citric acid to set the color. Don't do that. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Learn from my mistake, please. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help you because, oh my God, I was sick. I was sick. And I frankly thought about using the other skein of yarn that I have. That's the red color, because that was my original vision for this sweater. But I decided not to because it's not a terrible brown. It's got a little bit of pink. And it actually goes nicely. It looks good with the salmon-y color. And so I decided I'm going to go with it and use it, you know, and it'll be my object lesson sweater. But it's turning out really well. It's a lot of fun to do. So I did swatches, you know, I did swatches like I'm supposed to because I'm a fool, you know, swatches are big fat liars. But where's my other swatch? Oh no. There it is. Okay, so first I swatched and I did them all in the round, you know, because it's knit in the round. So this is what the body of the sweater is going to look like, and I'm perfectly happy with it. I think it's going to look good. And I decided that I like the fabric using a number 4 needle, which I think is what's called for in the pattern. But I wasn't getting quite gauge. I was getting, it's supposed to be 24 stitches and 30 rows for 4-inch square, and I was getting 26 stitches, and I forget how many rows. But I decided to go with it because I like the fabric, and I just made a slight adjustment to the size. You know, I was in between sizes. I wasn't sure what to do. This is supposed to have like 4 to 15 inches of ease, and I am not making a giant sweater because I'm giant enough. I'm just not doing it. So this was my stockinette, and so I went with the 4, and then I did a colorwork swatch. And I did it in the round too, and so I did the colorwork swatch, and I did it also on a 4, and I got the same stitch count as I did on the stockinette. So I said, okay, so I will use a size 4. Now, keeping in mind that this is the first colorwork I've done in 2 years, and only the second time I've ever done colorwork, this swatch. But it matched, so I was using the same needle for both. So I did the rib on a 3, and then I went to a 4 for the thing. Now this is what I'm using to tension the yarn. I'm a continental knitter, and I had watched Kristen of Vine. She did a video last year about how she tensions both colors on her left hand. She's a continental knitter. So I watched hers and decided that's really what I would like to do if I can do it. And so that's what I did when I was doing my swatch. And I had a while ago, people were talking about the dominant color and color work, and you had to be careful of this and that and this and that. And then I watched a video by Arnie and Carlos where they said there's no such thing as a dominant color in color work. If you have a dominant color, then what you have is a tension issue, which I can understand, because if you're tensioning with 2 different fingers, I mean, I can understand you're going to have a tension issue. I'm not saying I don't have a tension issue. Don't misunderstand me. But I decided that I wanted to do 2 colors on 1 finger. And that's what I did with my hat. And while I was at Vogue Knitting Live, I bought a little thing similar to this, but I bought the Clover brand. So you put your colors in it, and it had a clasp that went over the top of it and kept your yarn in. And I really liked that. And so I looked for that in my place where, in theory, it would be. And of course, it wasn't there because my messy room, I have no idea where it is, and I couldn't find it. So I went to Joann and I got this. This is the Susan Bates version of it. And in theory, you hook your yarn here, and then you can do multiple colors. The reality is, here, I'll show you how it works for me. Although I'm just pulled my, my sweater out, so it's a kind of a mess. When I do it, I basically have 1 color on one side and 1 color on the other, and it's actually the thing in between that is keeping my yarn separate. But it works, and it's worked fine. So this is what I use to keep my colors separated, and I keep them both on my left hand, and that's working really great. However, when I stopped after about the 6th row and I looked at my knitting, and you probably can't tell, but my size 3 ribbing is way, way looser than my size 4 color work. By the time I got to my 6th row, and there are over 300, little over 300 stitches on my needle. By the time I got to my 6th row, I had knit a lot of color work, and I had gotten into a rhythm, and it was working great. And when I did a quick little double check on my gauge, I discovered my gauge was not the same as my swatch, which of course it's not the same. This is the first time I've done color work in 2 years, and I was never an expert at it. So now I've done, 2,000 stitches in color work, and so, and I'm getting a rhythm, and it's looking good, and it's much tighter. And I know that people often go up a needle size to do their color work because it often is much tighter. So I decided, okay, fine. So after row 6, I went up to a size 5 needle. I'm not taking out 6 rows of this. Let me tell you, I don't even want to discuss it. I'm not taking it out. But I did move up to a size 5, and that is visibly, the stitches are visibly bigger, and I think it's going to work better. I have stitch markers marking off each of my pattern repeats. And so that's working out great. I will even show you the back of my knitting. People do that all the time. I'll show you. Oops, look at that. See? That's way too loose, that one. I'll show you here. But, I'm pretty happy with it. Kristen did show how to catch the yarn when you do that, and that has worked out great. There are only a few places where it's 5 stitches of the one color, and you have to catch the other color. So anyway, I am really enjoying this, although it does feel like it's a little bit slower. I mean, it's over 300 stitches, so that's one reason why it might be slower. And I can't do anything except knit when I'm doing this. I mean, there may be people who can watch podcasts and, when they're doing color work. I've only done 2 inches, not even. With the new puppy, she gets up early, and so I have been coming out here. Our deck has been a lovely place to sit and knit. I'm next going to be doing row 14 of the color work, and so I've been sitting and doing a few rows in the morning, and while Maisie is sitting around, which she is, and I'm enjoying that. And I feel bad about the brown, but I don't hate the brown. It's just not, you know, I wouldn't have bought the brown, and, you know. But I think it does look really nice. And it's got a little bit of a pink tinge to it, or reddish tinge to it. And I think it looks very nice with the salmony color. And I think it's going to look good. It's going to be fine with the main color of the body, which is this. So that's what it's going to look like. And I think that's going to be lovely. And I'm going to like the sweater, I hope, a lot. It's not going to be too oversized. The other thing about this sweater is at the sleeve, it has a set. So it has a little bit of the contrasting color showing on the sleeve. And I think I'm going to use the apricot color for that. She used the dark color from that. I think I'm going to use the apricot color. And in fact, when I did my cast on, I did a long tail cast on, and I used the, I don't know if you can see that, but I used the salmon color as part of my cast on, so it's got just a little hint of the salmon at the bottom before the ribbing starts. So I like that. I did that like on the brims of hats and things, and I think it looks cool. And so I think I'm going to use the salmon color as the contrasting color, because this yarn actually has, I don't know if you can tell, it actually has a little bit of that salmon color in it. And so, and since I like it a lot better than the brown, I'm going to put that on the sleeve instead of the brown, the formerly gorgeous red that is now the brown. So anyway, so that's my other work in progress. So I had a lot of knitting, but of course it's been quite a while too. And these ladies, I went on and on about these ladies in my, maybe my last podcast, because it was, I told you how to find them if you were going to Maryland Sheep and Wool. They do not have a website. And so I've only been able to see them. Once I found them at Maryland Sheep and Wool, I head straight for their booth first. It's very near the entrance where you go in. And I have a lot of their yarn, and I will be much more careful with it and not abuse it and ruin it when I use it with the next yarn, I promise. Anyway, don't do what I did. Don't do what I did. You'll be sad. Don't be sad. But I am happy with my sweater. And I think the brown and the salmon go fine. And it's not a horrible brown. It's just, you understand. But I decided to go ahead with it. And I'm not sorry. And I'm enjoying knitting that. And that's kind of fun. So that's the Novelli by Caitlin Hunter. This is my first Caitlin Hunter pattern. Did I say that already? I can't remember what I said. All right. I'm back. We are not going away for a while. Like I said, our plan isn't to go away till October. If I go away, I'll be I have some tentative plan to do something with my sister, but I'm not sure what will come of that. And Dennis won't be going, so it'll just be me. And that's it. I am so glad. I hope if you made it this far, thanks. If you're sad about no pictures from Russia, I'll try to do something. I need to go through my pictures, because we haven't done anything with our pictures. We haven't done any slideshows with our families or anything. So you're not the only ones who aren't seeing the pictures. We just haven't had a chance. Although we've been home almost 2 weeks now. So, but we got a dog last Thursday, and we were jet lagged and tired. Anyway. I hope you have lots and lots of time to do the crafting that brings you joy. And thank you so much for joining me. And thank you so much for subscribing. It just makes my day. I cannot tell you. And I will be drawing for prizes at the end of June. And I will see you in a couple weeks. I won't be so long next time, I promise. Bye.